We're going to be talking about lumber and how lumber is the ultimate economic indicator. Now, I have been trying to share this information for quite some time here on YouTube and on my channel, and how it is that you can look at the lumber and lumber industry as the indicator of what's going on within the economy. Not only like the industrial demand side of things, but just the economic activity in general. Lumber, in high demand of lumber, is a very good sign of this, but we see lumber in a very low demand and low prices. Now, something was brought up at the congressional hearing yesterday in which that lumber was described as being elevated in price, and yet at the same time we have the Treasury Secretary saying that lumber is at its lowest price that it's been in 5 years. And both of those are very disingenuous comments. Neither one of them are accurate when you look at the lumber industry and what it is that's happening right now. Lumber is in very low demand, low production, low inventory, low prices. And now none of this has to really do with the tariff. It has to do with supply demand issues that are happening within our own nation. Now, here in the United States, we are a big time developer of building supplies. Lumber is definitely something that we produce here in the United States. And although you will have a lot of people out there who say the United States doesn't produce high quality lumber, that is not accurate. Canada does produce high quality lumber. They do ship lumber into the United States, and the United States, when they were in massive consumption of lumber, they would get about 20% of the product, or 20% of their consumption would come from foreign production. Of that, a good 80% of that came from Canada. Now, so Canada did supply the United States with a good fair amount of lumber, but by far the majority of it comes from production right here in the United States. So we're not dependent on foreign energy, foreign labor, foreign anything like distribution or energies or anything else like that going on. It's all domestic and a domestic supply. And so when it comes to the United States and the availability of lumber, we can provide a lot of lumber for ourselves. And when you see it in the price form, it is very low. Like when you think about high prices due to everything out there with high prices due to the elevated printing press and money production and all that other stuff, this scenario, like this elevated inflation expectation, then goes into everything out there, right, including lumber. But yet the reality within lumber tells a very different story. Now, both the Treasury Secretary and Maxine Waters, neither one of them get the story right. But if you knew the story from the very get-go, then you would know why lumber is where it is today and how it is in short supply, and that the demand for lumber will cause the prices to move up soon as you see the availability of people and the buyer to get into new houses. Like, to me, this all lines up very easily. So when the money printer go burr and prices go up, and that is the only belief that people take in, the lumber story gets so confusing. Like, they cannot see it at all. It's just like, I don't get it. It must be manipulation, right? Because everything else in their life, they saw the prices go up. But yet, if you think about what it is that's happened within lumber, it really comes down to supply and demand, just like I had called out from years ago, right? And so when we think about, okay, supply demand issues that are now being faced within the lumber industry, it's very telling of why it is that lumber is where it is today. It doesn't have to come down to some sort of manipulation or tariffs or anything like that. It can really come down to the supply demand issue. Anybody else who tries to confuse it with anything else is going to misunderstand it and missee it and not see this, right? So as I look at what's happened with the dollar, in the dollar destruction and the dollar weakening and everything else that people want to say about it, I continue to look at lumber and say, how come it doesn't exist there? Right? It exists in everything else, but it doesn't seem to exist in lumber. And so when I think about everything that people talk about, for the most part, the world was in a global economy of distribution, meaning that everybody relied on a little piece and a little part of somebody else's distribution network on some foreign land in order to make it all assemble into one thing that you had going on, right? Lumber doesn't experience that the same way. Like if you're building a car or you're building a manufactured product or something and you need a component from China, right? You're part of that global supply. But lumber doesn't really have that situation going on. Like even the equipment that is used for the entire production of lumber, from cutting the trees all the way down to the distribution of the lumber itself, is almost all domestically supplied. There is no need for a distribution of a global scale. Now, when you think about that in the different sense, right? So now here it is, it's isolated to the United States specifically. And if the United States goes back to work, boom, it's immediately reestablished. All the efficiency that could ever possibly come to it is fastly found, right? In a very quick hurry. So this is the reason why we see lumber prices now sitting down at 7-year lows, right? Or probably not 7-year lows, but prices that we had experienced 7 years ago, right? This is very confusing for a lot of people to see, and I know I understand that trying to look at it from a different fashion makes it almost impossible once you have already kind of come to your understanding and conclusions on why things are the way they are. See, I don't look at the money printer as the reason why prices go up. I start to look at supply-demand issues. I look at who it is and why it is that they are buying and how available that is. People think about it all the time in a fashion of it's just seemingly just always available, and then it must be the dollar value that's causing it. See the difference inside of it? People think, oh, it's just always there. And then they think the dollar value changes. But they very, very rarely think how much demand for this stuff is actually happening. And that's creating the price. Or else why would the dollar not have found inflation inside of the lumber industry? If it didn't come down to supply and demand specifically, why did not inflation happen inside of lumber? It seems to be the only thing, and there's a few other things out there, oil, right? And there's all kinds of talk of manipulation and everything that goes into it, and I get it. I've read the stories and heard it a million times, and every single article that I have ever read or news agency that has ever talked about lumber, I don't hear the accuracy in it. Like, I don't know how many people out there have called out lumber as accurate as I have. And then when I go out there and I share some of the information, people say, dude, you must be wrong. Because no other agency, no other person is talking the way that you talk. And yet, here it is, time and time again, the accuracy of my calls on lumber are damn near 100%. And I mean, I don't know how I could see it any differently. I mean, I'm right in the middle of it all. And I get it. Like, it's very difficult to try and understand it from the mainstream media, because the mainstream media cannot do anything other than hype it up, sensationalize, and make it very dramatic. Because if they did it any other way, then nobody would look, and then they wouldn't exist. Somebody else who had a more sensationalized, dramatic story would get the attention. So no matter what you see on the mainstream media, remember, it's there to grab your attention. It's not there to deliver you information. And you can't necessarily read between the lines. I mean, you think about it. Here, Bezenet was telling Maxine Waters that she's confused about the lumber game. And I'm thinking, so are you, bro. Like, neither one of you guys got this right. And you're our leaders. Right? You're our leaders. You're leading us and you have no idea on what it is that you're talking about. And they both think they're right. And that's what I think is so scary about it. And then all the people who listen to them, they have no idea either. They think that these leaders are smart enough to understand what's going on within the lumber industry. And so they think, well, one of the two must be right. And so they'll pick a side. And then neither one of them are right. Right? And so this is one of the ways that they are able to actually continue to pull the wool over the people's eyes. I mean, you see how, like, they put the show on? Here they got mad at each other, created a bunch of drama and hate and screaming and mad. I didn't watch it. I just read about it, right? But here it is. They have this conflict. Now, think about professional wrestling, right? They hate each other. Oh, we're going to fight. We're going to be all, and then it's fake. Well, Maxine Waters and Besant, both of them got the lumber story inaccurate and then put a big show on, right? It's just like the professional wrestling game. And then people were very entertained by that. This video that is going to break down and try and share with you what is truly happening within the lumber industry will probably not get a whole lot of views because it's not really that exciting. All right? So once you see it, once you understand it, once you recognize what it is that's happening out there, then you don't look at the inflationary scenario and the money printer go burr and the Federal Reserve caused this issue and Warsh is going to come in and take care of business and Trump's going to have his way and all this other, like you kind of set all that stuff aside and you look at it in a whole different light. You look at it from the credible threat theory, because the credible threat theory is the only one that's accurate. It's been accurate the entire time. It focused around lumber as the indicator. It's been accurate around lumber 100% of the time. I don't know how many other people have used the credible threat theory in their own industries to understand what it is that's happening out there. But think about it. Most people are very confused. How many times have these economists changed their stories, changed their tunes, changed their understandings, changed their belief systems? But yet the credible threat theory stands still, saying this is what's happening. Okay? And it's ultimately the inflation expectation being risen in order to raise the neutral interest rate and make the economy less restricted. If you raise the inflation expectation, you will raise the inflationary scenario. People will just behave in such a way that will cause the inflation, but it didn't happen in lumber. They couldn't force that situation to happen in lumber unless you go out there and you actually buy it. The suppliers, they're cutting back. Every single day, you're going to read more about mill curtailment, shutdowns, inventory depletion. I don't know how many other people will see it this way, but this is what's going down. They're going to confuse the hell out of you. There's not one single story about lumber that I've found that was accurate. And when I see these elected leaders, when I see these people, these leaders out there who are talking this game and fighting with each other and then telling this story and calling out each other for being confused, and I think to myself, you guys are in charge. This is what you're providing for leadership. This is what we're supposed to respect, right? Be encouraged by and hopeful of. Like, I don't see it. I don't know why anybody would ever trust these people. I don't know why you would trust any of that mainstream media noise, considering they're just trying to get your attention and sell you advertising. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I try to do the same thing with clickbaiting titles and, catchy thumbnails, but the content is always the same. I won't change what it is that I'm doing out here because this is the true, honest belief. And keep an eye on lumber. When lumber starts to move, you're going to know things are happening within the economy. Right now, it ain't happening. And it's not because of the tariffs. And it's not because of anything that's going on within the administration. I wouldn't have been able to call it out as accurately as I have if it was anything to do with all that hyped up stuff. It's because I have ignored that is the reason why I've been able to call it out. I love it. People are like, man, you're delusional. It's all about politics, and I laugh. And I'm thinking, okay, well, keep calling that out and missing it because I'm getting it very accurate and I'm not looking at politics. Right? All right, let's move on here. I'm predicting 60%. I agree with you. Okay. It is in every industry. Land is expensive. Taxes are expensive. Permits are expensive. So if you want to sell lumber, it's better be cheap. See, lumber, it's not that if you want to sell lumber, it better be cheap. It doesn't work like that. You have supply and you have demand. You have a bunch of suppliers out there, people who mill, and produce, and then they sell it out there into the market. And then there's a demand for it. And if that demand does not reach their capabilities of being able to produce it, they cannot produce it. And then they shut down. So people say, you better sell it for a cheaper price. And it was like, we don't operate at a cheaper price. That's why they shut down. That's why there's mill curtailments and inventory depletion. So you can't better operate at a cheaper price. You cannot operate at a cheaper price. You shut down. Just read about all the job layoffs and permanent shutdowns and just devastation. It's not just the lumber either. You got to think about all the sub businesses that are from that too. Like, you shut down the lumber, then you also shut down the diners and the mechanics and the other people who were like had businesses that were benefiting from the fact that the mill was operating, right? So all that mill brings in new money, and that new money pours into the community, right? You shut down the mill, all the new money turns off, all the businesses turn off as well. You can't just make it happen cheaper, right? And it was like, if they want to sell lumber, they better do it cheaper. And it's like, they don't want to sell lumber cheaper. They just won't produce it. And then you won't have it. And then one day you're going to go to buy it, and there won't be any available. And the prices are going to get real expensive because people had signed contracts to build a house, and that becomes inelastic demand. And if you enter a bunch of inelastic demand through government, subsidized effort to try and increase the demand side of things, and there's not enough available supply on the lumber side, then what happens? Inelastic demand meets limited supply. Prices are going to skyrocket. They're going to do that if that situation was to unfold. There's no doubt. And then what happens, right? People are going to be manipulation, greed, all the other crap that comes with it. And I'm calling it out now. Like, if we have an increase in demand for whatever reason, I can't try to predict how it's going to happen. I'm just saying, if that was to occur, and there's plenty of reason to think that there would, when you have such credible threats of government intervention, then yes, that would cause a demand to then unfold that would be inelastic, meaning that they have no other choice. They have to buy it. And if there's none available, they come to me and they're like, dude, I want a bunch of lumber. And I'm like, I ain't got none. And they're like, dude, I'll pay you any price. And I'd be like, I still ain't got none. Right? And then when I do get it, it'd be like, okay, now that I do have it, it's going to be very expensive. And the person who has the most money is essentially going to get it. And it's an elastic demand. And it'd be like, there you go. And then, right? Like, that's how it works. If there was all this overwhelming supply, then they wouldn't experience that. All these people who sign these contracts to build properties would then go out there and find all the available lumber, and the prices wouldn't go anywhere. It would just remain what it is. But that's not what's going to happen. I mean, just go back and just Google it yourself. If you don't want to go back and look at all the videos, because they'd be buried in 1,000 videos that I've done, just go and Google it yourself. Look at like how much lumber production has taken place over the last few, probably I would say a year to year and a half. Look at the mill curtailment, shutdowns, inventory depletions that are happening. I mean, every single one of these major mills are shutting down operations. And it's not completely across the entire nation that every one of these mills are doing it. There are some places where they're actually building mills, right? But for the most part, you're seeing inventory depletion happening. All right. There, let's see. Which is exactly why I quit. Good luck getting your car fixed now. If it were automotive, cars are expensive insurance and expensive parts and expensive, but if you want to fix cars, you got to be affordable. The consolidation of the lumber industry during the first Great Depression was the Great Panic. Seems there is a rhyme going on. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the situation that we face right now should necessarily be compared to the Great Depression in the same fashion. We have a completely different thing that is going on here. The people themselves are going to be facing very depressionary effects from now on. Like the working class individual will never be able to find a position in which that their day job is going to provide them with enough for their life. It's going to deteriorate going into the future. And that is going to be very depressing and very depression-like era feeling. But that's not going to be for everybody. It's only going to be for those who are in the working class depending on that job. People who have moved into asset allocation are going to find it being a wonderful experience. And that's going to be so hard for the majority of the people to try and internalize and understand, because they are going to be looking around at 80% of the people going, why is it that we all are just feeling this pain and suffering here, and yet all I read about is how we have a resilient economy that is just chugging along and doing swimmingly well. And then they just question it. They don't get it. They just like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to explain it, that we have something called the Cantillon effect taking place, where if you have ever increasing amounts of new money, then you have separation between the rich and the poor. Now this should collapse, but the problem is ever increasing amounts of new money continue to pour into the system. And if you have this going on, then the collapse doesn't take place. The collapse takes place when the new money stops. When the new money pours into the system, the people who have first access to it, they get to use it and benefit from it, and then everybody else gets to wait while it trickles through the economy until they finally get it. The people who are closest to it, they get to benefit from it. Those who have businesses that are providing luxurious experiences to the top 10, 20% of people are going, it's not that bad. Right? I mean, if you're selling high-end airline tickets, you're doing pretty good. You're selling luxury cars, you're doing all right. You're selling these particular items, and you seem to be doing somewhat okay. It's not like great and killing it out there, but you're not doing that bad. It's because that's where the economy is participating, right? So then here again, we look down there, and 80% of the people are going, "What do we do about it?" And then I'm thinking, there's nothing. There's nothing left here for you. The only thing you can hope for is that maybe you'll vote for the right person who'll send you UBI, and then you use your UBI or whatever stimulus in an appropriate fashion, which means to get out of debt and then move into the asset allocation so you can be on the other side of the wedge with the people who are consuming. That's the unfortunate situation we now face. Lumber is a luxurious item now. You think about it. What is it that you're doing with lumber besides building a house? You might be building shelves in the garage or something, but then again, if you're buying lumber, most likely it's because you're a property owner, and if you're a property owner, you're enjoying the luxurious experience. Very few people get to be property owners anymore. There was a time when there was an individual who could get a day job and then hold back on increasing their expenditures so that they could secure a decent rate of interest beyond that of their occupation, save enough money to become a property owner, and then everything was hunky-dory for them. They just lived out this great American dream. Today, that gets very difficult. You end up spending all your money on student loans, credit card debts, car loans, insurance, all the food and everything else that costs money. And your day job is not making it better every year. It's deteriorating and getting harder every year. And this is the unfortunate consequence of now living out this ever-increasing amounts of money from the Cantillon effect. It's very easy to understand it once you see it. And then it's difficult to break the old thought patterns that have been just drilled into us from childhood, right? The movies, the TV shows, the conversations, the news, the people that we trusted and believed out there, they filled us with a system of understanding that literally has now enslaved you, right? It's enslaved the people. And I don't know if they necessarily realize it. I'm sure a lot of people do, but it's not just necessarily through debt issuance and putting people into consumer debt and then holding them in that and then taking it all for themselves. This system is now evolved into I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a survival of the fittest kind of position that you now have to take. People used to look at it as hey, we can all rise together kind of thing. But if you take that mindset, you're going to end up being pulled down into the suffering of the masses out there, right? Because the people themselves can't rise together anymore if they are no longer the working class individual who is producing and saving. The individual, if they were producing and saving, like made that conscious choice together, their power enough would then rise, right? That's the rising of the people themselves. But they don't go down that road, and that's a very unfortunate consequence because then the power gets lost over time. See, when, like, people are like, dude, you're just giving up. I'm not giving up. What I am trying to explain to you is that if you go down the road of trying to raise the people's power up, what that means is cutting back on expenses and securing a decent rate of interest so that then you can secure that position in life that then has a flow of money coming towards you. And that ultimately is the asset holders. So the people themselves have to understand that is what they have to do. When they do that, you will find the change happening within the economy. That's how the people rise. It's not joining them, it's understanding how your power is getting lost and how to take it back. Once you do that, the people themselves, in their conducting of their behavior, will then change the economic environment. It will change the political environment. It will change all that stuff. Because literally, you will just be conducting yourself in a way that will then force that outcome. But you can't, like, as long as people are going into more consumer debt, more student loan debt, more all these other things, and they find themselves falling further and further down the line without ever positioning themselves into some sort of return on that investment, whether it's rental properties or stocks or bonds or business or just even education itself so that they can level up their income. If they don't do that sort of path, they're going to find it deteriorating away. Lumber is a great indicator of this because lumber is now a luxury item. Why else would you need to buy lumber unless you owned a house? Right? It used to be the average everyday working class individual would be down there at the lumber yard buying lumber on the weekend because they were the people who worked on houses, their own house. Today, not so much. The only people who I see buying lumber are the people who own houses themselves or carpenters who are working on other people's houses. But those people who are working on their houses, they are very few and far between considering what it is that we have now here in the community is a retirement community. People who are remote workers. When I see them come down to buy lumber, they're not necessarily buying a stack of 2x4s so that they can remodel their house or put an addition in. They're buying 2x4s so they can build maybe a shed in the back or some shelves in the garage or something of this nature. When it comes to building and constructing, it's now carpenters who are getting paid to do it. It's not necessarily people doing it themselves. Yeah. All right, man, I've really babbled on this one. I just wanted to come out and talk about lumber. I don't know. Houses for sale, take the front lot. The house collapsed towards the lake and they not bothering tearing it down. Seller lazy is all I get out. Yes, lots of worth perhaps. Okay. Investing your money into a rate of interest aside from your occupation is great, but you are keeping that money within the system. Stocks and bonds are part of the system. What then? It all collapses. What then? It all collapses. Okay, well, this is one of the reasons why I always say you have to have an insurance policy, right? The insurance policy of gold and silver. That's the third party. You're taking your risk by being in the third party. Well, you can exit that third party risk by being in gold and silver. Now, you can be 100% in gold and silver and miss out on the opportunity to have that return, whether it's in stocks and bonds or whatever it is you got going on out there, so you can try and protect yourself from that collapse, that what if collapse. Well, that's why you have the insurance policy, because at that collapse, that insurance policy is going to go through the roof. That's how you got to hedge. That's the only way you do this. You can't, there's no way you're going to be 100%. There's no way. If this thing goes up, usually that thing goes down. So you counterbalance everything within your life. And now that's not the way you make it rich. If you want to be rich, you put everything into one thing, whether it's your business or an investment or something. Like, you put it all into one thing. That's how you make it rich. But if you want to be somewhat stable out there and you want to be consistent, then you diversify into many things. Like, even I think about it, like, I'm into some incredibly volatile, I like Bitcoin and silver, and these are incredibly volatile items, and it bounce all over the place. But when I think about it in the grand scheme of everything that I have going on out there, it really doesn't have that much volatility in the overall position that I hold within my life. Like, it doesn't create a bunch of chaos for me. It's just something that's, if I didn't even look, it wouldn't change anything about my life. It's the only reason why I even know about it is because I look at it. So if I didn't look at it, no change. And that's the way I position myself. Many other people are like, oh no, man, I need it to go up because I need that money right back next month so that I can reposition myself and take a little bit and do all that. Like, oh, that's too much for me. I'm a carpenter and I know why studs are 92 and a quarter. Well, they're actually 92 and 5/8. All right. 104 and 5/8, 92 and 5/8. These are pre-cut stud lengths. Studs are not 96. The pre-cuts are. You can get precision cut. Yeah. They raised prices on everything so nobody can afford to diversify. That's not true. Like, that's not true. 92 and a quarter, 8-foot walls. It's 92 and 5/8, 104 and 5/8. All right. Oh, is it different sizes? No way. No, it can't be. Because, like, the problem with doing different sizes like that is that not all lumber travels to an exact location. It kind of flows into the system somewhat like water. Like, it goes through distribution hubs and networks and it finds its path. Now, don't get me wrong, like, there's specific species of lumber that generally stays into a particular area, like southern yellow pine stays in the southern region, and Doug fir kind of stays up here in the northern region, but they do find their way into, kind of mingle into each other's, like, areas. Now, when it comes to, like, plans here in my area, like, it's specific on the plans. You got to use Doug fir larch, right? So it's like you got to have that particular species. We don't even see southern yellow pine framing lumber come up into our area. It just doesn't even show up here. There's a completely different market for it. There's a completely different futures market for it. So that I can understand. But when it comes to construction, they can't have a bunch of different sizes going on there. Like, the dimensions of the lumber have to be fairly consistent because you have bracketing systems, you have, just the material itself, the way it's designed and cut so that it all continues to lay out in a particular fashion of consistency, right? So I mean, like, that's one of the reasons why if you go to a metric system with the Canadian producers who have talked about that because they have these tariffs going on American lumber, what they have talked about is now moving into a metric system on their production so that they can go out there to the European markets or other markets that are not necessarily using, like, the imperial system like the United States is doing. Once they have done that, like, that material can't come into the United States. So, like, I mean, I guess it could, but nobody would really be using it. There might be a carpenter out there who say, oh yeah, I'll use it, no worries. But for the most part, it's not going to go through the distribution network. Like, our retail yard has very consistent sizes, 92 and 5/8, 104 and 5/8. It doesn't matter which mill you get it from, so long as it's a 2x4, which is going to measure 1.5 by 3.5 inches, and that 92 and 5/8, you can mix mills studs together. It doesn't matter. The wall is still going to come together the same way, right? So this has to be very consistent within the industry. Okay. What time is it? Oh, I gotta go here real soon, guys. Okay. Da, da. Digital currency or not, precious metals will retain value. Whatever unit we use to measure, it doesn't matter. All right, Yui, do you see opportunity at the current time to deploy extra money? What assets are you keeping your eye on? I don't give investment advice. This is the thing. I've tried to share as much investment advice as that I'm willing to give you guys because I really think it's absolutely a personal decision on what it is that you are doing and the reasons that you are doing it, right? I've tried to share as much as I can. Like I've talked about like how I've done with my stock portfolio. I try to buy into Bitcoin and silver, work on the house if I can. Sometimes I feel lazy about that. But these are the places that I have tried to deploy money. I'm not trying to share or hold back any magic secret. I don't know if I have any magic secret to share, and I don't know if there's any magic secret out there to share, right? The more I looked for it, the less I found it. The more I had to do research, the more I realized, man, this is really coming down to a brick by brick scenario. You put it down piece by piece by piece. Okay? If you are wanting to have a portfolio of dividend paying stocks, you have to start researching dividend paying stocks. Follow those stocks, buy them in on the low, understand what the yield is, know what your position is, know what the risk is behind it. And these are the things that you have to do piece by piece. And over time, as you put it together, you don't really necessarily look for it, you just see it as it's taking place. You recognize the opportunities as they're happening. And so this is how I've formed like what I feel is a very stable position in a lot of things. Even though I'm into a lot of volatile items, I don't look out at the economy and have a lot of concern. Like I don't fear the situation. Not only do I look at it a whole lot differently than what most people do, and because the mainstream media propagates and pushes that inflation expectation in order to raise that neutral interest rate, you have to think when that happens, the top 20% are killing it. They really enjoy that situation happening. The people who have positioned themselves into asset also get to see that awesomeness that comes from it. They don't get to they're not at the 20% level, but they get to see a rise in their portfolio, and they get a little bit of that wealth effect that comes from it. I don't know how many people I've talked to. They're like, man, the economy is really bad. It's really slow. Things are really sucking. And I'm like, yeah, how's your stock portfolio doing? How's your retirement fund? How's your rental properties doing? And they're all like, oh, I'm doing real good, right? Because they actually feel it from the working class point of view. They're looking out there, they're mingling with all the people and they're saying, yeah, it really sucks. But then they look at their personal position and they're like, well, yeah, it's not that bad because they're actually an asset holder that's doing well. They see it from both sides. Like I see it myself, I mean, 10 years ago, I would have only seen it in one fashion, right? I'm down on the bottom side. I have no assets. Everything is painful and it's getting worse. But because I was able to acquire a position in my life in which that I'm able to get a little extra money, and that extra money I put towards a secure rate of interest beyond that of my occupation in some sense, right? Mostly it's speculative items, but regardless, whatever. I'm put it into a position that is going up in value, and I'm recognizing that as the reasoning that the people at the top are absolutely killing it and doing so well as far as producing the consumer that the economy is looking for. If they destroyed that, they destroyed the entire economy. What do you like? I mean, I look out there and I'm like, holy crap, man. If you don't get into assets, you're going to be left behind. That's all there is to it. All right. I personally would like to know that, Chris. So, what am I like? I don't know what to tell you to like get into. I mean, I don't know. Buy Bitcoin. I don't know, man. All right. What time is it? Oh, geez, guys, I gotta go. I wanted to hang out a little longer and keep talking lumber. Looks like they are Marketing XRPX. Say you've protected yourself with owning gold and silver, then the monetary system goes to a central bank digital currency, then I would no longer be insured outside of the system. Your thoughts? Well, I mean, I think that's okay. Well, I think that's probably a good idea of what it is that could possibly happen going into the future, but then again, it is just an assumption, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen with gold and silver, and we don't know if it's still going to be able to secure you as an insurance policy outside of that third party risk. So to me, if they switch to a digital component, like a tokenized dollar, and then like that whole system is then like, out of the cash realm, I cannot think of any better of a position that I would want to be in than to have a crap ton of gold and silver, right? Because at that point, you don't have any opportunity. You don't even have a cash opportunity to get out of the system. That's going to be 100% locked in every way, shape, or form without any exit possibility. And if you're not in gold and silver, there's literally no exit. You would have to be into firearms and food production and tools. Right? That's that kind of thing, because there would be nothing else available. All right, guys, I would love to hang out, but I gotta go. Read Chris's comment. All right, where is it? Which one is it, Deja? I personally would like to know that, Chris. What is it? Say you've protected yourself. Oh, is that the one, Deja? Did I get it? If I didn't, message me. I'll answer it in the next video. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.